A Fine Balance is the second novel by Rohinton Mistry, published by McClelland and Stewart in 1995. Set in an unidentified city in India, initially in 1975 and later in 1984 during the turmoil of the emergency, the book focuses on four characters from varied backgrounds: Dina Dalal, Ishvar Darji, his nephew Omprakash Darji, and the young student Maneck Kola, who come together and develop a bond. Rohinton Mistry CM, born 1952, is an Indian-born Canadian writer. He has been the recipient of many awards, including the Neustadt International Prize for Literature in 2012. Each of his first three novels were shortlisted for the Booker Prize. His novels to date have been set in India, told from the perspective of Parsis, and explore themes of family life, poverty, discrimination, and the corrupting influence of society. The emergency in India was a 21-month period from 1975 to 1977 when Prime Minister Indira Gandhi had a state of emergency declared across the country. Officially issued by President Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed under Article 352 of the Constitution because of prevailing internal disturbance, the emergency was in effect from the 25th of June 1975 to its withdrawal on the 21st of March 1977. The order bestowed upon the Prime Minister the authority to rule by decree, allowing elections to be cancelled and civil liberties to be suspended. For much of the emergency, most of Gandhi's political opponents were imprisoned and the press was censored. Several other human rights violations were reported from the time, including a mass campaign for vasectomy spearheaded by her son Sanjay Gandhi. The emergency is one of the most controversial periods of Indian history since its independence. The final decision to impose an emergency was proposed by Indira Gandhi, agreed upon by the President of India, and ratified by the Cabinet and the Parliament from July to August 1975. It was based on the rationale that there were imminent internal and external threats to the Indian state. Indira Priyadarshini Gandhi, 19 November 1917 to the 31st of October 1984, was an Indian politician and a central figure of the Indian National Congress. She was elected as third Prime Minister of India in 1966 and was also the first and, to date, only female Prime Minister of India. Gandhi was the daughter of Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India. She served as Prime Minister from January 1966 to March 1977 and again from January 1980 until her assassination in October 1984, making her the second longest-serving Indian Prime Minister after her father. Historical fiction is a literary genre in which the plot takes place in a setting related to the past events but is fictional. Although the term is commonly used as a synonym for historical fiction literature, it can also be applied to other types of narrative, including theater, opera, cinema, and television, as well as video games and graphic novels. Brooke Allen, writing for The Atlantic in 2002, noted that this was the first book by Mistry which went out of his familiar circle of Parsi characters and aimed at describing the whole Indian society. Whereas the main characters suffer a lot in the book, and all of them in the end lose, throughout the book they continue laughing, and the book is not perceived as tragic. She also mentions that Mistry's use of big metaphors makes the novel reminiscent of great 19th century authors. Summary. The book exposes the changes in Indian society from independence in 1947 to the emergency declared by Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. Mistry was generally critical of Indira Gandhi in the book. She, however, is never referred to by name by any of the characters, and is instead called simply the Prime Minister. The characters, from diverse backgrounds, are brought together by economic forces changing India. Prologue. Ishvar and Om's story. Ishvar and Omprakash's family is part of the Chamar caste, who traditionally cured leather and were considered untouchable. In an attempt to break away from the restrictive caste system, Ishvar's father apprentices his sons Ishvar and Narayan to a Muslim tailor, Ashraf Chacha, in a nearby town, and so they became tailors. A powerful upper caste village thug, Thakur Dharamji, has his henchmen murder Narayan and his family for having the temerity to ask for a ballot. Ishvar and Narayan's son Omprakash Om are the only two who escaped the killing as they lodged with Ashraf in the nearby town. As a result of their skills, Ishvar and Om later moved to the big city to get work, by then unavailable in the town near their village because a pre-made clothing shop has opened. At the beginning of the book, the two tailors, Ishvar and Omprakash, are on their way to the flat of widow Dina Dalal via a train. While on the train, they meet a college student named Maneck, who coincidentally is also on his way to the flat of Dina Dalal to be a boarder. Maneck, from a small mountain village in northern India, moves to the city to acquire a college certificate, as a backup, in case his father's soft drink business is no longer able to compete after the building of a highway near their village. Maneck and the two tailors become friends and go to Dina's flat together. Dina hires Ishvar and Om for piecework, and is happy to let Maneck stay with her. Dina, from a traditionally wealthy Parsi family, maintains tenuous independence from her brother by living in the flat of her deceased husband, who was a student. Dina's story. Dina grew up in a wealthy family. Her father was a medical doctor who died when she was 12. Her mother was withdrawn and unable to take care of Dina after her father's death, so the job fell to Nuswan, Dina's elder brother. Nuswan was rather abusive to Dina, forcing her to do all the cooking, cleaning, and drop out of school, and hitting her when she went against his wishes. Dina rebelled against Nuswan and his prospective suitors for her when she came of age, and found her own husband, Rustam Dalal, a chemist, at a concert hall. Nuswan and his wife Ruby were happy to let her marry Rustam and move to his flat. Dina and Rustam lived happily for 3 years until Rustam died on their third wedding anniversary, after being hit by a truck while on his bicycle. Dina became a tailor under the guidance of Rustam's surrogate parents to avoid having to move in with Nuswan. After 20 years her eyesight gave out from complicated embroidery and she was once again jobless. She eventually met a lady from a company called Au Revoir Exports, Mrs. Gupta, who would buy ready-made dresses and patterns. She agrees to let Dina sew the patterns. But since Dina has very poor eyesight, she decides to hire tailors. She also decides to have a paying guest to generate more income for her rent. The tailors rent their own sewing machines, and come to Dina's flat each day for nearly 2 weeks before the first round of dresses is completed. The three get along fairly well, but Dina and Om Prakash do not see eye to eye all the time. Om Prakash is angry that Dina is a middle person, he wants to sew for Au Revoir directly. Maneck's story. Maneck was born in a mountain town in the Kashmir Valley to loving parents, Mr. and Mrs. Kola. Maneck is drawn to the natural scenery of his homeland, straddled between the Himalayas. His father owned a grocery store that had been in the family for generations. The store sold household necessities and manufactured the locally popular soda, Coca-Cola. Maneck spent his days going to school, helping at the store, and going on walks with his father. When he was in 4th standard, Maneck was sent to boarding school to help his education. Much to his dismay. After this, his relationship with his parents deteriorates because he does not wish to be separated from them and feels betrayed. His parents send him to a college and choose his major, refrigeration and air conditioning. Maneck goes to college and stays at the student hostel. Maneck becomes friends with his neighbor, Avinash, who is also the student president and who teaches him how to get rid of vermin in his room. Avinash also teaches Maneck chess and they play together often. Avinash later becomes involved in political events, for which Maneck has little interest, and their friendship is no longer a priority for Avinash. They start seeing each other quite infrequently. But when the emergency is declared in India, political activists had to go into hiding in order to be safe, Avinash included. Maneck, after a humiliating ragging session by fellow hostel students, has his mother arrange a different living situation for him, and he moves in with Dina Dalal. Center. All three are beaten into the truck, and since Ashraf Chacha is so old, he is gravely injured and later dies on the street. Ishvar and Om Prakash beg to escape the forced sterilization, but the vasectomy takes place. As they lie in an outside tent recovering, Thakur Dharamji comes by and orders the doctor to give Om a castration. Ishvar's legs become infected due to the use of unsterilized surgical equipment used for the vasectomy and must be amputated. However, Ishvar and Om have nowhere to go now that Ashraf Chacha has died. His son-in-law sells his house and they are forced to leave town. Effects of the emergency. Edit. Dina and the tailor's business runs fairly smoothly for almost a year, but effects of the emergency bother them often. The shantytown where the tailors live is knocked down in a government beautification program, and the residents are uncompensated and forced to move into the streets. Later Ishvar and Om are rounded up by a police beggar raid and are sold to a labor camp. After 2 months in the camp, they bribe their way out with the help of the beggar master, a kind of pimp for beggars. Ishvar and Om are lucky and Dina decides to let them stay with her. The tailors and Dina find trouble from the landlord, because she is not supposed to be running a business from her flat. She pretends that Ishvar is her husband and Om their son. After this does not help, she gets protection from the beggar master. Ishvar and Om return to their village to find a wife for Omprakash, who is now 18. Maneck returns home, finished with his first year in college. He has received a certificate but not a degree, but has stiff relations with his family and finds that his father's business is failing due to the invasion of cheap commercial sodas. He takes a lucrative job in Middle Eastern Dubai to escape the conditions. Dina, being alone now, and her protector the beggar master having been murdered, has no protection from the landlord who wants to break her apartment's rent control and charge more rent, so she is evicted. Dina is forced to move back to her brother Nuswan's house. Prakash and Ishvar return to their old town to find that Ashraf Chacha is an elderly man whose wife died and daughters were all married off. He gives them a place to stay while they search for marriage prospects for Om. While they walk around the village, they run into the upper caste Thakur Dharamji. Om Prakash recognizes him and spits in his direction. Thakur in turn recognizes Om, and decides to somehow pay Om back for his disrespect of an upper caste member. When Ashraf Chacha, Ishvar, and Om are in the village, they run into herders from the family planning center. As the center in this city did not fill its quota, they take random people from the street and force them into a truck that drives them to the family planning center. All three are beaten into the truck, and since Ashraf Chacha is so old, he is gravely injured and later dies on the street. Ishvar and Om Prakash beg to escape the forced sterilization, but the vasectomy takes place. As they lie in an outside tent recovering, Thakur Dharamji comes by and orders the doctor to give Om a castration. Ishvar's legs become infected due to the use of unsterilized surgical equipment used for the vasectomy and must be amputated. However, Ishvar and Om have nowhere to go now that Ashraf Chacha has died. His son-in-law sells his house and they are forced to leave town. Epilogue. 1984. 8 years later, Maneck returns home for the second time from Dubai for his father's funeral. Maneck is repulsed by the violence that follows after the Prime Minister's assassination, for which Sikhs are killed. He returns home and attends the funeral, but cannot bring himself to truly miss his father, only the father of his young childhood. While at home he reads old newspapers and learns that Avinash's 3 sisters have hanged themselves, unable to bear their parents' humiliation at not being able to provide dowries for their marriages. Shocked and shaken, he decides to visit Dina in Bombay for better news. He learns from Dina the horrific lives that Ishvar and Om, one disabled and the other castrated, have led as beggars after their village visit. As Maneck leaves, he encounters Om and Ishvar on the street. The 2 former tailors are nearly unrecognizable because of their filth, and don't appear to recall him. They try to attract his attention, but he doesn't know what to say and walks on. Maneck goes to the train station, his world shattered. He walks out on the tracks as an express train approaches the station and commits suicide by letting the train run over him. It turns out that Om and Ishvar were on their way to visit Dina. They are still friends, and she gives them meals and money when the house is empty. Dina and the beggars discuss their lives and how Maneck has changed from a pleasant and friendly college student to a distant refrigeration specialist. Om and Ishvar leave, promising to visit after the weekend. Dina washes up their plates, and returns the plates to the cupboard, where they are to be used later by Nuswan and Ruby. Dina Shroff later, Dina Dalal when married to Rustam Dalal. Ishvar Darji. Om Prakash, Om, Darji Ishvar's nephew. Maneck Kola. Nuswan Shroff Dina's brother. Zenobia Dina's friend. Mrs. Gupta Zenobia's client Dina's boss. Vasantrao Valmik the proofreader and lawyer. Ibrahim the rent collector. Duki Mochi father of Ishvar and Narayan. Thakur Dharamji killed Om's father and is later in charge of the family planning and holds political office. Ashraf Chacha Duki's friend. A tailor. Nawaz Ashraf's friend. Rajaram initially, a hair collector and later, Bal Baba. Monkey Man a resident of the slum who kills beggarmaster. Aban Kola Maneck's mother. Farokh Kola Maneck's father. Avinash Maneck's good friend that mysteriously disappears, president of the student union and chairman of the hostel committee Sergeant Kesar. Shankar the crippled beggar, also known as worm who rolls on the ground. Beggarmaster step or half-brother of Shankar, and who controls all the beggars. Shanti, a girl in the slum. Jeevan Taylor, who was with Om and Ishvar in their first assignment. Ruby Shroff, Nuswan's wife. Rustam Dalal, Dina's deceased husband. Shuran Auntie, Rustam's aunt. Darab Uncle, Rustam's uncle. Mr. Tadiwala, chatty man at the music recitals. Fredun, Dina's male friend. Xerxes and Zarir, Ruby and Nuswan's children. Narayan Darji, Ishvar's brother, and Om's father, ordered flogged, burned and hanged by Thakur Dharamji because he, along with 2 other men, demanded they be given a ballot. Kim, lazy child. Pandit Laloram, a Brahmin.